Hi, everyone. Welcome to this onset panel. I'm so thrilled to be here today and to really moderate one of my favorite topics. It's all about collaboration, working with different departments, and ultimately bringing that synergy to make a project so much better. My name is Ripon Cinder, and I am the writer and director of an Oscar contending short film called Flight 182. I'm so excited to welcome our talented panelists. Thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into your work, but first of all, I want to properly introduce you. Please welcome our production designer of War of the Worlds, Clarence Major.
Hi.
Next, next we have with us VFX supervisor of Long Legs and the Monkey. Please welcome Edward J. Douglas. And last but not least, we have the cinematographer from Bo, Artist at War, Sean Seifert. Thank you again all for being here, and I'm so excited to dive in. So to kick off the panel, I really want to ask each of you, what is the starting point for you when you get a new film project? You've gotten the job, you have the script, and now what is your thought process?
I mean, for me, um, I, the script or that material is key. And so I really kind of make sure that it gets inside of me and really, um, try to find out who those characters are and what they're about. And, so then I can create the environments around who they are psychologically, social, the social part of who they are, kind of their background. If there's no background, I'm really creating that. And I start to write. I write a lot of things. Like on a film I did in Bangkok, I wrote a lot of poetry, so I'll doodle and start to draw, create environments out of my head, out of where I think they, how they grew up, where they went to school, what their home life was like. Um, so for me, it's really that becomes the the starting point, and sort of kind of birth the child as I start to kind of create the environments, and from there, everything is meaningful layers um, in each one of those environments.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it definitely starts with the script as well. But a lot of the time when I'm being brought on, the director's been sitting on working with the script themselves. So I want to hear what they're seeing when it comes to my part of the world. I want to make sure I'm doing their movie for and starting in the same place that they are, and then hopefully kind of going off in my own little direction a little bit to bring back some of my creative side to the conversation. But I mean, as a DP, I'm so reliant on everyone else to kind of provide all this world that I then get to shoot. So it's script, director, and then what everyone else is kind of bringing to the table for me to kind of play with.
Yeah, so in visual effects, there's two different directions you can come at on a project. Sometimes I'll be lucky to come in very early. Um, Sometimes even before project greenlight, I'll have a script and I'll be able to break that down and understand the type of work, the scope of work. Is this a project where visual effects is a key creative contributor, or is it a project where we're playing a support role and working with Osgood Perkins on Longlegs, the Monkey, the upcoming Keeper, and more. We have a really great working relationship, so I have a good sense off the page where he's going to take it, what he wants to see, and how to help him prep. Other projects, I'll come in quite late. Maybe the film's being shot and we're supporting only in post-production. So it's a matter of understanding how best we can help based on what's being shot, what the resources are available. Um, and the way for me as a visual effects supervisor, I love the kinds of projects where we can help design worlds, collaborating with a production designer, with a cinematographer from day one, because ultimately we're carrying all of your work forward, expanding your worlds, honoring all the celluloid you shoot or the pixels you capture, and trying to make sure everything we do is an extension the production design work, the cinematography work, the performances of the actors, if we're enhancing that part of the world as well. So it comes from on the projects where we start very early. It comes from the script, creative perspective. What does the director want to see in a production perspective? What's within our resources and scope, and how far can we take it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, when you're all talking about that relationship between the technical and the creative to really elevate story, that's really what I want to dive into a little bit more. So, Clarence, can you talk to us about, War of the Worlds, really integrating practical miniatures and CGI, and you had storyboard animation and this immersive destruction, right? So, how did you really decide which techniques really served the story the best? And then how did those technical decisions really start to influence the emotional tone of this world?
What drew me to the film was it was a relational film, and we were looking at it as a screen life film that had a title that people were I think people were expecting something different than what we shot, and they edited it into a different film than we shot altogether. And so it really has to do with a father a son and daughter saving the world. And so um, our main character works for the Homeland Security, and so really um, um, he's really focused on trying to. And I know this is a technical question, and I don't get to that. Um, he's trying to be in relationship with his children, and he's a workaholic, and he's not doing that. And so the mother of his children died of a rare blood disease. His daughter is a bio scientist that comes up with a cure for the blood that will actually save the world. And there's a spiritual aspect to it. Faith, David, and David is the son who's a hacker who is really with an army that has actually been cut out of the film altogether. All these influencers that were part of this saving the world, we shot all these sequences with these famous influencers, some in Canada. so they actually saved the world through this blood um, cure. And so that was the essence of the film, stuffed into a screen life. Um, and they're all brought together because of this crisis that's happening in the world. And so that's the film. And so that was what brought me to the project. It was interesting to be able to create all these environments where we're going to look at it on a screen life. And so we had all these uh, different apparatuses to actually capture everything. Cameras back to back, cameras with phones that were uh, attached to cameras. So we designed everything based on that. There was a big sequence in downtown LA where we actually focused everything into the idea of that what it was going to be on that vertical phone, because the screens it was going to have multiple things on the screen. So we were creating those sequences. We were actually shooting multiple scenes at the same time. When you're watching the film, you're thinking that there were people that were just reading their lines separately. We were shooting at one point. We shot 7 locations at the same time. I shot New York, um, 4 places in LA. We shot Texas for South Africa, so we had to black out all the windows.
I
Anyway,
think you raise a really interesting point, is like sometimes as creatives we can't really we don't know ultimately where things are going to land and what that process is going to be, but when we are with different departments on set, there really is a type of collectiveness, and we're all headed towards a particular goal. And so when we're speaking about what that onset, magic moments are, I love to, turn it over to Sean. If you could, or, Sean and Edward as well, like when you are collaborating across departments, you can really transform a film when you understand and can speak the language and hone in on that with your collaborators. Could each of you really share a moment where you were working with design or costume or VFX, cinematography, or any other department really, and those intersections unexpectedly made a magical moment for a project?
Yeah, I mean, I can, the funny thing with camera department, and I was taught this early when I was like a camera trainee, is that we're the one department that doesn't have anything to give anyone else. We just take. And that's from a practical onset thing too, right? Like you go to electrics because you need some power, you go to grips because you need some help moving something, but camera, we don't have anything to offer anyone. And that kind of carries through all the way into the shooting as well, because departments don't come to us because they need something. We go to them because we need something. And so I'm so reliant on everyone else to give me things to shoot and to give me a set and to give
Mm,
me the actors and the costumes and all that. And so those moments pop up all the time where I show up, oh, there's a lamp in the corner that I love for whatever reason. And all of a sudden it's inspiring how we're going to block the scene because we're going to pull the actors more towards that lamp or something like that. I mean, a favorite of mine is from a TV movie I did years ago with McKenna Grace called Bad Seed. And we have this psychopathic 15-year-old girl who goes around murdering people and she's living this duality of life. And we have this scene where she's supposed to kind of practice being normal in a mirror. And we ended up production design and props gave us this kind of three winged mirror, like a center one, like a very classic mirror. So we were able to shoot behind her and get multiple reflections at the same
mm,
time.
mm,
And we talked when we were shooting, it'd be really cool to actually see different emotions on those mirrors and kind of do a little
mm,
thing. Of course, as Clarence was talking about, what you plan doesn't always make it all the way to the end.
mm.
But we still ended up with this great scene of kind of just her in these two mirrors that kind of reflecting her two sides.
Nice.
That's really cool. So in the visual effects world, I do go to camera for things all the time. I need camera data, I need measurements. My data wranglers are bothering you. I need clean plates. So
I
you as
stand corrected.
you as a camera department gives me so much that I rely on, and I'm very grateful. So on a movie like The Monkey, which is it's a Stephen King horror comedy, where there's where an old family cursed toy causes death and mayhem and destruction. We really wanted to be grounded in kind of a 1980s like Joe Dante, like Robert Zemeckis on a little bit of acid kind of vibe. So really grounded in kind of the feel of practical effects, like from Gremlins and Death Becomes Her, those kinds of things. So for me, the kind of the guiding principle for how I wanted to approach visual effects for all these wild moments, like people exploding and heads falling off, is how much can we build practically? What are all
Mm,
the
mm,
ingredients that we can get on set? And then I'm remixing these ingredients, and then using CG and synthetic elements where we needed to, but starting from something that we're filming on set. So it's all a relationship with every department. So when we're in prep, for all the deaths, we had endless death meetings. We call them, just looking at every moment where somebody dies in a horrible way, and then breaking down what department contributes what angle do we think we might shoot this at? What do we build with the makeup special effects team? What's our practical effects team going to contribute? What are all these pieces that we can bring together, and then will that give me all the pieces, all the ingredients I need to create this moment, through post production? Because it might be a moment where we can't do it safely or feasibly in all together on set. So so it's an endless collaboration with every department. And I love that, I love being able to work with the same crews over and over, where we develop the language and the shorthand of how we like to work together, and then so it's not the situation where I get to post production and they say, "Here's some footage. Good luck." We're building the pieces ground up.
mm, mm.
So on the monkey, for example, one of the big crowd pleasing moments was this woman who jumped into an electrified pool and then explodes all over this motel pool poolside, and um, and that was a collaboration with camera to figure out what are the angles we need to cover, what kind of distance we need to cover with this explosion. Special effects, the team that would set up their blood and guts cannon, the locations team to make sure we had this heated pool, special more special effects team for how we're going to electrify it, how we're going to have this like air conditioning unit come off, and then all the way along, how far can they take it and where do I have to take over? And
Mm.
ultimately working with the assistant direction team about all the different elements, the layers, the plates we're going to need, the cadence of how we have to shoot these all these pieces so I can put it together in the end. And it's just really fun for me to kind of do those figure out those puzzles with all the departments and then put it together on set, and then ultimately, like, one of my favorite audience is when we do the cast and crew screening because people work so hard on all these pieces, and then I get to show them, look, this is what we did. and,
Mm.
and I'm other than the director, I often end up being the only person who sees the entire project all the way through,
Mm. Mm.
early script read all the way to like sitting in the final color grade. The editor um, obviously has an immense contribution, but the editors I work with rarely make it to set. So it's a pretty amazing seat to be in where I get to watch it all the way through from like that first read to the very end.
Can I
Well, Edward,
piggyback?
okay, yeah, yes,
Can I
please.
piggyback on that?
Hmm.
Thank you, Sean and Edward. Those are really great aspects to what we do technically. And one thing about um, the the World of Worlds was that our director is a visual effects. Um, you know who he is, Rich Lee, and so um, it was easy because he knew what he was going to do. There were some other things that happened between the time we shot the film and what we see now, but um, all those sets were most of the sets were practical, and the people think that he was um, Cube was in a green screen set. It's actually a full set. We built the set inside of a location. There was a dark green wall behind him, and he had glasses on, so he had a little bit of green and green from the reflection of the actual location, not the set. And it was
Mm.
a real set, practical set, everything. There were all these things, but I just wanted to say that those sorts of things. Um, uh, there's a sequence where the robot is coming out of this rock. Those are all practical sets, um, and it was enhanced in visual effects in the end. So there were a few things that were like that, but for the most part, it was actually shot live action. But Rich was there; he knew what he needed, and so we were able to be very economy. We were very economical about what we needed to shoot.
Well, I think that's so fascinating. You've said the buzzword prep and pre-production, and the specificity of those decisions. I wonder for each of you, what is something that you really wish people knew more about in this behind the scenes part of prep? Because that really is where a lot of a movie or show is really made, is the decisions that come to the table at that stage. So can each of you really talk about the prep process, the sort of going off of Clarence, what you were just talking about?
For me, prep is kind of does two different things for me. First is it's the planning, it's the details of the day. It's making sure when we get to every day on set, we know exactly what we're going to execute on. We have the resources, we have the plans. The set's going to be there. The props are going to be there. We know we have the time to do what we need to do. We have a plan we want to execute on, and we have the resources and time to do it. And then, especially in the visual effects land, for me, it's just about setting expectations. It's about talking about every scene that maybe we think we need visual effects for, or we have dreams and desires for, and having the director and the producers especially know what we can achieve based on our budgets. based on the time we have. So we can look at a frame and we say, yes, we can add this here, we can add that there. Or this expectations is set where we say, no, we can't pan the camera over to the left because we will never have the money to make that look good. And we can go in and have something that we can all expect what we need. Because I think a lot of visual effects people, myself included, have been on set or gotten footage where they shot something that we we can't deliver on. We can't deliver at the quality that we would love to based on the budgets we have. So being able to have those conversations up front and then and know exactly what we can deliver on and know we can do it really, really well is it's a very important part of prep. And maybe if we do have to make compromises, we're doing that in early conversations. There's so much that we do in prep. There's so much we do on set. But the work doesn't really start until we've shot the film and we see how the edit comes together because we discover so many new things in the cut. So prep for me is making sure that we're really, really well set up to execute fantastically in post-production.
Yeah, prep for me is how do I say it? It's kind of for a cinematographer, or for at least for me, it's kind of like hitting your head against a wall over and over and over again for however many days of prep you have, and then you just start shooting. Because you're just like, there's a million things we have to figure out, and you can get through all of them, but it doesn't feel like you are. It feels like there's still just a million, no matter how many you do. So I mean, I will spend a lot of my prep is spent location scouting.
Yes.
Say I've got a 3 week prep. I'm probably in the vehicles traveling for 2.5 weeks, and then all of a sudden there's 3 days to
Yeah.
actually figure out how to shoot it in
Hmm.
those days, and we're still figuring out the schedule. Or we're still, it's like, how are we doing this? And then all of a sudden we're on set day one, and oh, okay, we're shooting, and we made the day, and we do it again.
Hmm. I'm going to use three different examples of prep and how they, um, we never have enough time, right? um, and so, like on the consultant, I had a whole sequence where um, I wanted to make sure that Christoph comes into this organization that is a high tech organization, a gaming company in LA. But when he comes into the organization and takes it over, we wanted to show that he would be taking it from digital to analog. So I created this whole thing, the sequence where he would go down in an elevator, go into a server room, which had decrepit walls, and then go into a records room where he would actually be typing everyone's information on an Underwood typewriter. So it was a dungeon that he was in. So that whole sequence going down, we're watching him go into a high tech elevator, into the server room. In the server room, we had the decorator gotten these servers, but we needed them to be two-sided. And I created this whole idea that everything was you're being pulled into a maze. You're being he's pulling you into a prison, and so the whole idea was to make sure that no one walked in a straight line. So as and so the servers were set up in a maze, and but the director wanted to make sure that we would know something about the character as he went by these servers that were blinking lights. So we had to take all the servers and reinstall them two side, and they would every time we would go by, they would turn red. They were blue, and you would know, okay, this is a clue into the character. So, of course, we didn't get the servers until a day and a half before we're going to shoot, and so that's the sort of thing where everything turned out great, but it's that sort of thing.
I love where this is going. Sean, I really want to dive into your cinematography. You have this beautiful, beautiful film, Bow Artist at War, and I want to really ask you, it's a difficult film, and yet in terms of subject matter, it's based off of all of this truth. Can you really speak about finding this emotional core and this visual tone because it's beautifully done?
Oh, well, thank you. I think it was like walking on a tightrope for this movie because, it's a Holocaust film. It's taking place in Auschwitz. It's got some overlap with Schindler's List because they're both true stories and true people. Um, but our lead character here, Joseph, is a bit of a mischievous comedian, if you will. I mean, he's an artist. He finds ways and to find kind of the humor, often dark, but he does find it, and just as he did in real life. So our inspiration was his own artwork that we had some access to, which are these black and white sketches that he made in the concentration camps that are
Wow.
still around to this day. And in some cases, I actually tried to really use these very gothic sketches as framing inspiration,
Mm.
just to kind of pay homage to him a little bit. And then in terms of the movie kind of walking this tightrope, I think that's kind of a balance between the director, Sean McNamara, and myself. I kind of pictured the film a little darker than it ended up being. And that worked out well because Sean's this big energy guy. And so his kind of energy crept through a little bit and maybe pulled my darkness up a little bit, and I pulled his brightness down, and we kind of met in the middle a little bit. And I don't think we were deliberately doing it. I think we both thought we were on each other's page from day one. And we were like, we didn't fight about it on set or anything like that. It worked. But it
Uh,
was funny to see the movie at the end and go, oh, there's a little more humor here than I thought there was, that I didn't see on the day. Probably because in my head I was, okay, how do I get the shot and how do I tell it, Holocaust movie way, and Sean is, well, I want a little moment of levity here. So
But
yeah, is
can
that,
you speak a little bit about some of the visual language though? Because it has black and white elements, and it does a lot of unique things, and I would love to learn a little bit more about that.
yeah, I mean, so when we were shooting it, for me it was try and show the world through his eyes as much as possible. So again, that was referencing some of his artwork when I could. Um, we also had to cover a lot of time periods from, I think it was pre 1940 all the way up to the 1970s. So I was doing different color tones for those, slightly different framing styles. And then, as for the black and white, that was kind of used just to help convey the color draining out of his world. The movie starts in 1970. It's relatively colorful, and then we flash back to him being in the ghettos just before a lot of the Jewish people were carted
mm.
off, for lack of a better word, to the concentration camps. And we're almost black and white at that point. We left just a bit of color in it, and then it just gets more and more desaturated as the movie goes. So literally around him, the world is just turning into shades of gray. But he's still a little this beacon of light, and I tried to always keep that light on him a little bit so that he would stand out in the frame just enough, that he draws all these people around him, including eventually his wife, who he meets and marries in the concentration camp.
Wow.
If you remember Schindler's List, that is actually a scene in the movie, and that is a true thing that happened. So our story is about that couple.
Mm.
What would you say was one of the hardest aspects of making that film from your vantage point as a cinematographer?
Time. We had 19 days to shoot the whole movie. So we ran the whole time.
Wow.
Running a second unit, running four cameras, factor in a Canadian winter that decided to be especially Canadian that winter here in Vancouver, where it doesn't snow very often, and all of a sudden we had a foot and a half of snow on our sets. So that it was a lot of little technical issues.
Mm, mm,
But thankfully, Sean, our director, just again, big energy guy. He just would keep plowing forward, and the rest of us would just follow him as best we could,
mm, mm,
and keep making the movie.
That's awesome. That you always have to have some big energy to keep moving forward, right?
mm.
100%.
That also, like, I love what you're talking about with tone. I'd love to, Edward, I know you mentioned this a little bit before, but when you're talking about the monkey, you really are bringing in practical digitals that you were talking about. But how did you really step into balancing the tone, whether it was humor and horror, especially from your specificity?
Yeah, tone on the monkey was a huge conversation early on, and this movie was such a departure from what we did on Longlegs and what Oz had done in his previous films, which were quite dark and grounded. We knew it was a Stephen King horror comedy, but what did that mean in terms of Oz Perkins? So the references we started using was, so I mentioned Gremlins. As a key reference, American Werewolf in London was one, but then Looney Tunes, Itchy and Scratchy, and and figuring out or having us all realize, come to the realization that this wasn't this wasn't a realistic world. This was a cartoon. This was over the top. When somebody explodes, there's three times as much blood in their body as there should be. And that's something that I think took a while for many folks to really wrap their head around, that when we say we're going to go big, we really, really mean go big. So on back to that pool explosion scene, for example, um, we had this practical blood explosion. And it was good and it really set the tone. However, we needed to go further and we wanted to add more blood elements that we filmed in visual effects. So working with one of the teams, one of the visual effects vendors, we'd say more, more, and they're just going up by tiny increments. And finally they're like, okay, let's go way, way, way too far. And so they sent back what they thought was going to be way too much. And we looked at it, and Oz looked at it and says, "Yep, that's it. You got it." So it was a matter of like really giving ourselves permission to go too far and see what that looks like. Like it's for me on a movie like that, it's a lot easier to dial things up to 11 and then pull it back down than like start at a 4 and then like push it up to a 5. Okay, let's now push it up to a 6 to try to get to where you're going. And then, of course, the next film that's coming out in November, Keeper, is a totally different tonal shift. And as a team, we've had to take um, that journey again. But it's interesting talking about the practical effects and how that affects digital effects, CG, visual effects. I did an interview some months ago where somebody asked me, "Did you have a lot of meetings in VFX about what the color of the blood would be?" And we said, "No. We shot a bunch of blood, and whenever we wanted to add more, which we definitely did, we said, well, you see that blood that we filmed? Same color, just more of it." So for me, having that grounding, that tonal grounding in the plate is so critical. We can do anything in CG, and that's a problem. We can't do anything. We shouldn't do anything. We should do very specific right things that
Hmm.
fill in the world and expand the world that we're putting in front of us on camera.
One of our general questions to sort of close out the talk is, looking back at your recent projects for each of you, it's a twofold question. What is the single creative choice that you were so excited to see on screen? That's the first question. And the second part of that is, what is something you wish you would have known if you were the younger you wanting to do what you're doing now?
Something that I wish I'd known in my younger self, earlier career, when I'm, say, a department director of an area, if I'm running a part of the creative on a project, it doesn't mean that I'm in charge of coming up with all the ideas for that. It doesn't mean that I'm the decision maker in that area. It means at the end of the day, I'm accountable to the team, to the director, to the production to deliver in that area. And I get to I get to bring in all the ideas and the needs and support from all the departments um, to make that happen. And that's something I think I struggled with in my early career about the idea of, well, if I'm running this department, my ego says every idea has to be mine. And that's utterly not true. At the end of the day, people look to me to deliver on that. But it's a collaborative film, and in my previous career in video games, everything is so collaborative. We all have our ownerships that people trust us to deliver and contribute to the projects. And then what's something a recent thing I'm really excited about? Well, so it's not out yet, but there's some things in the next Oz Perkins film, Keeper, that I'm so excited for people to get to see. Some really amazing, wonderful work that I got to do with a team with Oz. So um, That'll be out November 14th in theaters, and wish I could say so much more about it right now, but very excited.
I'll do what I'm looking forward to. I mean, I'm very much looking forward to Bao coming out. It's been sitting kind of done for a while, but with the fires in LA and the strikes and all that, it's been delayed. So I'm very excited for that, and to see some of what we got to pull off very quickly. I mean, one of the scenes that comes to mind, a bit of a VFX thing for Edward. I mean, very very old school tiling. But we have this scene with all the Nazi soldiers showing up into the ghettos to round up everyone, and we had one truck and six soldiers to fill up this whole city block. So we did a lot of tiling very, very quickly, and I know, having done the color correction, the final shot looks like 100 soldiers and 10 trucks, and it was fun to see that get pulled off, and kind of sell that we had more than we did. And then, yeah, you know what? For advice for younger me is learn how to be more social on set. Not in a way that you're just talking all the time, but in making connections. It's so much a part of the job. And younger, more shy version of myself wasn't great at that, and I think I could have had a little more success younger had I done that.
I think for me, the the thing that was exciting for me to see on film was there was a sequence in the Consultant where um, Craig, our main character, who hadn't gotten any kind of recognition from his boss or his he was a game developer, and so all of a sudden Christoph is actually paying attention to him. So Christoph invites himself out for a drink with him at and he takes him to a dive bar. He says, "Hey, you've taken me out to a great place. I'm going to take you someplace." So he takes him to this club, and it was, we created this thing from like nothing, and so the idea was he goes up in this elevator, and I always create these kind of environments where I try to make things push people into small spaces and then open it up when you come in. So that was the whole thing. I made this kind of lobby very narrow, and we come into these really tall doors. He opens the door, and it's like this club that is all blue and gold, and it's a clue into who he feels blue because he hasn't felt noticed. I had a blue crying tree that was also in the space, and I paid homage to The Shining, where the bar had a section that was lit from below, above, and the hero table, and there was another thing over the top of their heads, were these gold knives made out of a light fixture that was made out of knives. And it was all about the sword of Damocles. So if you really want power, you may not want to really get this power. So he sits down with Christoph, and it was great to see that sequence happen. The best part of that was the next day he comes back, and he walks into because he had to take his clothes, and he walks back into the space. The club is completely gone. It's not there. It's I created this CGI version of that same space, the office space. No one's there. Even the red cup and the red phone is in that environment, and it freaks out. Ends that episode, and it's the whole thing about that show was, how did I get here? I'm in prison. Am I gonna survive? And so that was an exciting sequence for me to see. I'm at home on a set, and I love what we do, and um, I think it's so important that we um, this is all relationship. It's all communion and community, and um, I think it's kind of important for us to when all the prestige is gone, all the other things that, the projects, I think we're left with each other. And for me, it's about building character among ourselves within this community. That is kind of important. I don't know if that came off the right way, but
Oh,
just like,
100%. We are an extension of our work, but we're always in community. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. Each of you, it's been a privilege to hear a tidbit. I wish we had so much more time because I could keep going. I love talking about all these details. But for the meantime, I just want to say to each of you, thank you for sharing. That is the time that we have today. To Clarence, Edward, Sean, thank you for making time to be here with us and to discuss your incredible work. And we will be rooting you on with all of your projects that are forthcoming. So thank you.